Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the panel discussion on rethinking cybersecurity, building a resilient digital infrastructure. This discussion is brought to you by the Economic Times and by Microsoft. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Alokesh Bhattacharya. I'm senior editor of the Economic Times, and I will host today's discussion along with my colleague Suchetna.
Good afternoon, all of you. I'm Suchetna Ray, Senior Assistant Editor of the Economic Times. It's a pleasure to have all of you today on the panel. And before we begin, a quick round of introductions. We have with us Atul Gupta, Partner, Head of Cybersecurity, KPMG India, Badri Subramanian, Vice President, MIS, Bajaj Auto, and Chandan Pani, Chief Information Security Officer, Mindtree Limited.
We also have with us Yuval Wolman. He's the Chief Cyber Officer of UST and the Managing Director of Israel and President Cyberproof of UST. And last but not the least, we have with us Deepak Talwar, National Cybersecurity Officer of Microsoft India. Very warm welcome to all of you on this panel, and a very warm welcome to the audience who are watching us here.
What we've seen is that cyber criminals have never been as active, perhaps, as we've seen them during this pandemic. In fact, you could say that the COVID-19 pandemic was actually accompanied by a cybersecurity pandemic.
Very high percentage of attacks, and the attacks have really intensified, like Suchetna mentioned. And all these attacks have been targeted at corporations, at governments, at critical infrastructure, at you, at me, right? Individuals like us, at our homes.
You know, such a situation would normally lead to a spurt in investments in cybersecurity. That's what you would think. But reports indicate that businesses were busy with ensuring business continuity, and this has led to cybersecurity investments actually taking a backseat. To take all these questions and debate on the larger issues, we have, of course, on the panel today, cybersecurity leaders from some of India's top organizations, and we hope today's discussion will throw some light on what steps companies can take to neutralize this spike in cyber threats. To start things off, I would like to invite Atul Gupta of KPMG India to set the context before we delve into today's discussion. Over to you, Atul.
Thank you, Suchetna and Alokesh, for setting that background. And good day, everyone. It's a privilege and honor to be out over here and having a conversation on a topic which is so close to me. I know I'm bound by the timelines, otherwise I could just go on and on. But let me just start setting some context over here and looking at the topic, which is resilience in bringing in the digital infrastructure. Is that what we are looking upon now, going upon when we are rethinking cybersecurity? I'm a firm believer when I look at this subject, as well as otherwise, that there's been a while now the digital world or the virtual world and the physical world has been coexisting. And there have been enough and more opportunities for one to pick learnings from one part of the world and take it to the other world. The year gone by, 2020, will be known in the history for many reasons. We were not prepared as mankind to deal with it, but the physical world stood up to it. And what came out was the resilience of the mankind. And that resilience of the mankind really came in because of the background in which the entire human civilization has evolved over a period of time. It's a great opportunity for us to bring that learning from a physical world into a virtual world, where we are realizing that the virtual world is becoming a big reality and the way for us to operate going forward. But resilience is going to be fundamental if we have to make the virtual world to be as operative as the physical world has been over the past few decades. We at KPMG have been looking at cybersecurity from multiple lenses. A traditional approach used to be looking at cyber as a technology risk, but we elevated the conversations and we took the conversation to a level where we started looking how the boards in the organizations are looking at it, how the chief executives of the organizations looking at it. And every year, KPMG does a global survey of the chief executives. Since 2016, globally, cyber has been coming as the top 5 risk by all the global chief executives and the leaderships, which possibly implies that it's no longer just a back office risk. It's not just a technology risk. It's a risk which really matters at the boardroom level. It's a risk where the business executives are really bothered. But the year gone by, 2020, was even more interesting And this was a special year where we as KPMG did two surveys. We did one which was prior to the pandemic, which was in the month of January, February, and March. And we did the one which happened after the pandemic started upon. It was with a pause, 3 months pause thereafter when the survey was conducted. What emerged in both of these surveys, cyber was again featuring among the top 5 risks. So it's good to see that the boards and the chief executives are very clearly aligned, saying cyber is going to be continued to be looked upon as a business risk. And it's no longer a business risk. I'll flip upon the conversation over here. It's actually becoming a competitive opportunity or a differentiation opportunity. And Alokesh, you just talked upon saying how digital channels have been embraced in the year gone by, how most of the stakeholders are interfacing and interacting through digital channels. And what's becoming fundamental to that is establishing digital trust. If you can't establish digital trust, those stakeholders are not going to be having right interaction with you and your organization. So cyber is no longer a risk which organizations need to deal upon as a business risk. It's actually, if you don't deal with it, you're going to have a competitive disadvantage in the marketplace where you're operating. And that's the big shift which is emerging. And resilience is going to be the core behind it for every organization to be able to sustain. I just want to bring upon 5 key points why we are discussing on this area and why it's so topical. Actually, I wanted to start by thanking both Economic Times and Microsoft for bringing this forum together where we're talking on this area. The 5 points which I wanted to highlight, and yes, cyber risk has been changing, but what's changing really? It's the narrative which is changing. In past, the narration which used to happen around cybersecurity was on confidentiality of information, integrity of information. Everyone today is talking on saying that's important, but what is extremely important is how resilient are we in today's environment, because the attacks are just increasing. So it's no longer a question of if there will be an attack. The question is more when there is an attack, how resilient am I to withstand that attack? So that's the big one shift which we are seeing in the narration, which is coming across from organization. The second narration which is changing is looking not just as technology, the risk elements, but looking at risks more closely. And if the biggest risk has emerged from the malware and ransomware, the double click is today coming on data resilience. How do you create a data strategy which is resilient enough to operate in an environment in which we are operating upon? And that's a point which maybe from a maturity perspective, we still have a long way to go about dealing with it. The third one, which is emerging, is the entire emergence of a new category, which has always been in existence, by the way, is third-party risk or supply chain risk. It's emerged in a very big way. It's a trusted third-party providers who are bringing in a very, very different risk to the organizations. It was visible in the month of December 2020 when there was a big global cyber incident which was identified, and it was attributed to a supply chain attack which happened upon. And again, the world started questioning, saying, is there enough trust which we are building upon if we have to augment our capabilities on resilience? And that's becoming a big debate and a big topic to be looked upon at this point of time. The fourth one is this decade. If I was to take 2020 off as an aberration, this decade is going to be a decade of everything being connected, be it with the newer technologies coming in form of 5G, be it on Industry 4.0 becoming closer in a reality, be it IoT and connected becoming more and more closer at this point of time. And when everything is connected, then resilience becomes utmost important. So that's the fourth big trend which is coming across. And the last but not the least trend, the trend which I wanted to highlight, is ability to embed artificial intelligence and decision making. If you cannot bring upon a technology which are operating on two levels, one is on ethical side, which is a completely different subject, maybe not for the time today, but the second is being resilient enough for the decisions to be taken upon and to be providing the value chain from there on. If that is not resilient enough, then we are not preparing our virtual world to coexist with the physical world, the pace at which we have started this journey. So those are my 5 key points, which I wanted to start and set the context upon, saying why this topic is so resilient, is so important and relevant when we are looking upon from a resilient and a digital infrastructure. And maybe that's the decade, that's the term which we should be using for this decade. And I would like to add upon to that term, building upon digital trust also, because trust and resilience has to go somewhere hand in hand. Otherwise, the coexistence which is there between the virtual world and physical world may not have the right dynamics to operate upon together.
So it's time for us to dive into the discussion, and I'll begin by asking Yuval a question. This is we all know about the standards that we follow in India. We all know that the government now is seriously considering upping its cybersecurity strategy because of the several attacks from China that we thought on the stock exchange, the Bombay electricity. And also recently, a group of ministers of the government said that in the next 6 months, perhaps, every company in India, even at a small level, will have to have a dedicated cybersecurity cell. So when we compare India's efforts and the protocols that we follow in India, globally, how do they compare? Where does India stand?
Thank you for the time that you gave me, and I'm very honored to be in this panel. I think that you guys, allocation, Suchit and I, you built a very interesting panel, and varied one, because people from KPMG and Microsoft and Mindtree, and I'm sorry for getting the other
Bajaj Auto.
Right? They are all very relevant to the threat that we're seeing in the Indian market. Each one from a different perspective, attacker or consumer, defense or offense. I believe that the Indian market is, I read only yesterday data coming in that it is 3 times higher in terms of vulnerability attacks taking place in India. And you mentioned some of them from the adversary in China, but there are many other adversaries that India is facing. Some from a national perspective, some from not the state level perspective, just groups, rogue groups of hackers. And I know from what I've read, although I'm not living in India yet, but I'm part of UST, which is a very rooted company in many parts in India. And I'm following and I'm seeing that the Indian government has brought up many initiatives, not only in the cybersecurity area, but rather in the digital transformation area, which only exposes more the realm for attackers. I know those initiatives are even effective, but the magnitude of the Indian market and the magnitude of the Indian population, the consumers, is so big that the process will take a few more years. I know that in the private sector, let's talk about the private sector for a moment. In India, there are many initiatives already being taking place, even without the pressure coming from the government, the federal government or the state governments. I see somewhat a gap between some sectors to others. If you look at the infrastructure, critical infrastructure, there is still a significant gap and vulnerabilities attached to it. But if you go to the banking or the financial system, we are seeing more and more customers being aware, allocating more budgets. We're seeing, I would like to second your opening statement and say that there is an ongoing trend. Let me take another step forward on that. In the cloud migrating environment, that India, I would say, is even a leader, not only as a services provider, but also as a business private sector consumer. It creates even bigger risks that needs to be mitigated. When you look at the global arena, let me give you a perspective. I'm speaking with you from Tel Aviv, from Israel. So I want to give you, Israel is a much smaller company, probably a neighborhood of in size of a large Indian metropolitan. In Israel, which is a powerhouse for cybersecurity capabilities, both on the offensive side from a state level perspective, also on the defensive side. UST is working a lot of, as in Cyberproof, the cybersecurity division of UST, we have a very advanced capabilities in the defense and monitoring side. But generally speaking, even in Israel, the powerhouse of hundreds, if not thousands of cybersecurity startups, we see a significant gap between the public sector and the private sector. The public sector, we have, I'm not talking about fence now, I'm talking about how to secure the perimeter of critical infrastructure companies or energy companies, etc. You have a very clear regulation and allocation of budgets and resources coming from the government to the public sector, to the public related sector for defense. When you go to the private sector, you see many vulnerabilities. We also have adversaries, as you can guess, national adversaries, and we are being attacked daily. And we see a lower pace, too low pace of protection taking place. The regulation is very advanced, but the gap between regulation and protection is still big in the Israeli private sector. I'm also seeing that in the States. When you're looking at our UST US, North American customers, we see a gap between different sectors. I don't want to make verticalization of the problem, but there is a significant difference between financial institutions, and we have here some representation of this sector. In the States, we see a highly regulated, highly aware of the federated needs of those enterprises to retail or heavy industry. So those gaps are gaps in implementation of the policies are different across sectors, North America, even here in Israel, and also in Europe with our UST customers in Europe. I have many thoughts about how to mitigate that. Most of them are related to the wonderful panel members here, but I will save it to later probably.
Thank you, Yuval. Very, very interesting points you make. I will. Yes, Chandan, I was going to come to you only. So you make your point, then I'll ask you my question.
Sure. I echo with thoughts of Yuval. See, if you look at in last couple of years, the Digital India mission, which was started some time back, and part of that adoption of digital technologies, which is growing pretty fast in India, right? Couple of years back, probably the adoption of technology in the government sector was not that much. Now, if you look at it currently, probably 50 plus smart cities, couple of safe cities, which are kind of digitally entangled with applications, cameras, digital surveillance systems, ITMS, your municipality corporations were well integrated with the digital ecosystem. Now, along with this, there is a continuous push to improve the technology to ensure that right set of services are given to citizens of India. Now, along with this, what is happening is your cyber requirement or the cyber security requirement for India as such is also growing. So there is a continuous push going on to ensure that our IoT endpoints are secured, the IoT endpoints are secured, the platforms what we are currently using are also secured. There's the right amount of push is going on from Government of India to ensure that security is adopted at different levels, right? The different public-private partnership programs are going on, so that there is a continuous push going on to ensure that the right amount of security as a country we are also adopting at par with international standards. Now, if you look at from a statistics point of view, see what happens is at times we feel that probably things are not right within India. But if you look at any other advanced country, similar kind of attacks are there, similar kind of issues are there. If you look at a critical infrastructure attack, I think it is elsewhere, it is more visible than what is happening in India. Of attack, probably we are at par with any other nation what is currently going on, but that is not something which is good to boast about. But my point is, yes, we are trying to improve our cybersecurity posture as a country. We are also trying to ensure that right set of technologies is actually getting partner inside India, and Government of India also is focusing on this piece.
Chandan has responded. I'd also like Badri and Deepak to come in on those issues. Who wants to start? Badri.
Thank you for pointing that out, and thank you for giving an opportunity, Suchetna, Lokesh, and good start to the entire conversation at all. Great insights from Yuval from the perspective of what the industry is aligned towards. But the way that I see it and I belong to the automobile industry, though there is nothing much predominantly in terms of an overarching standard which kind of aligns to automobile in terms of ISO. The demand, especially when it comes to connected devices, especially when we actually were launching our product, which is electronically enabled, is pretty high. and we need to follow the NIST standards. There is a definition and a construct around which we need to work. There is a constant intervention which is coming in from the government of India to secure ourselves. There is a constant interaction which is currently happening with state government boards, specifically the specialized branches on investigation, especially alerting us on threats from outside this country. And it is very heartening to know that the government of India is taking a conscious stand in terms of helping organizations to realize as to what exactly is impending threat outside. And it's helped us to relook as to what we have as an implementation in terms of technology. It forces us to look inside and starts helping us to visualize how digital trust can be formed, especially when we launched currently, when we went live with our e-commerce initiatives outside. We were very clear that information security will be bound along with the initiative. So business and information security are now going hand in hand. Instead of underplaying information security, it is foreplaying it. It is ensuring that we are taking it upfront and we are taking the bull by the horns. Apart from that, we have created awareness campaigns in the country, which is also pushed very, very categorically by the government of India. So there's a lot of initiative driven by and supported by the government, and we are constantly being assisted today.
I'll take the same question to Deepak. You would like to chime in here?
Thank you for this opportunity, and fortunate that we already have a view. Alok has said, then Alok has set the context of how we are seeing the resilience. But going by the topic, saying rethinking cybersecurity, and I'll go open. What is it we need to rethink? What is it we were not doing? We also need to see from everything in the past we have seen. But one thing which got completely changed was 2020, while we were talking about COVID-19 and seeing post-COVID era which has started now. The landscape has shifted to cloud first, coming from a cloud platform provider organization. And even as cloud first and edge first world, we believe that cybersecurity is at the core. There is no doubt about it. It's a saying that are you in the journey of cloud in the initial stage or at a mature stage is the question. But the second part, which is most important, is the data which we are seeing when we set cybersecurity as a central challenge of digital age. Just to give you one aspect, it could be financially motivated. It can be nation state. We have seen supply chain management issues recently. The type of attacks have grown because of the digital estate, which has grown a lot. So the connectivity, like we are one of the maybe top 3 countries in the world of the consumers of the devices, right, with the population. And then it's not only about financial frauds or seeing into the cyber crimes. It's a nation state, already said earlier, talking about, are we building the resilience against a corporate safeguard? Are we building to safeguard government? Is it for enterprises? If you ask me, every organization, every government entities, industry bodies, everybody has to be in a condition called as assume breach. It's something like we are always living with the breach, and that's where you will start rethinking that, is this something to do with the attacks? Is this only about IP thefting? Is it only about other spying, and so on and so forth? One aspect more I would like to pose on threat actors, which we always talk, it's cyber criminals, nation state, hacktivists, and insiders. When I said insider, it is like an IT environment which is causing. And the threat vectors which has taken to build that resilience and to rethink is also not just social engineering. It is not just giving some information because it's about security. As Microsoft, security is not only security, but actually it goes beyond a security, compliance, which is the era which we are living in, identity, because we are living today with physical identity and virtual identity. While we are talking, we have our virtual identities available everywhere, And if you have all this available, is there a way to manage it? That means, can I have in this large digital estate, minimizing the attack surface area? We say how minimum you can get and how quickly you can respond, Thanks to Government of India, thanks to enterprise, all the corporates, when we have seen COVID-19, what worked well is the response to that incident. Now in cyber world, to respond to the incident is seconds or minutes, So how you can build or embrace the journey of cloud, how you can rethink in the era of intelligent edge and intelligent cloud to make sure. There is also an essence of threat intel. The faster we have threat intelligence sharing, for example, threat intel sharing between the governments, cross-border threat intel sharing faster coming to us, right? One mentioned about it. How do we comprehensively build that up? And then we go for end-to-end integrated story, not, it's something called privacy by design. So every product which is created with AI, with IoT, can it have integration as by design? You don't bolt on security. Security has to be built in. And if I can add on, can I have privacy built in? Because now we are running with data. Data as an oil, it is going to be humongous. I will add more in my next coming opportunity. But this is how I feel.
Deepak, you've actually taken the conversation to our next topic, which was about cloud. But before we go there, I'll come to Atul. Very important points that our panelists have raised. But we have to remember that the cyber criminal is always perhaps one step ahead of us, right? And the fact that you have low-cost mercenaries, cyber mercenaries in India and in Southeast Asia, it complicates matters for the government, also for companies, when you have to, defend yourself against multi-vector attacks. Your thoughts, Atul?
Yeah, good question, Suchetna. And I think this threat has not changed in the recent past. While building on the point what Deepak said, maybe the landscape has changed. And what's really bringing upon into question is, are we applying the same design principles which we were applying in the yesteryears? And if we believe those will be good enough in the current digital age, then we are not preparing ourselves to deal with the various attackers, whether they are constantly evolving or whether they are constantly coming upon with newer innovations. I think my recommendation at this moment is we need to go